Well, hello. Welcome to Orchid Blooms podcast. Welcome back, bloomers. My name is Orchid Brown. I am your host with Orchid Blooms podcast. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter, at Orchid I Brown. On today's episode, we will be talking about red flags. When writing this podcast episode, I was thinking about the questions that I want to start out my writing with. And one of the questions that I had was, are the red flags we witness in relationships the same as the red flags in our friendships? The second question was, do we have different standards for intimate relationship than we do for friendships? So many questions, but I'm only going to stick with two. What are red flags? Most importantly, red flags in people, because that's the focus of this podcast episode. It's looking at our relationships that we have around us and truly trying to figure out and learning more about ourselves, looking internally and figuring out why we allow red flags in certain areas of our life, but we don't in other areas of our life. Or do we allow red flags throughout our lives because of certain circumstances? That's something that I found fascinating, and I really wanted to dedicate this podcast episode to kind of talking about that. Red flags are warning signs that can indicate potential problems in various areas of our lives. In relationships, red flags may manifest as controlling behaviors, lack of trust, low self-esteem, physical, emotional, or mental abuse, substance abuse, narcissism, anger management issues, and codependency. I can say I have witnessed these types of red flags in friendships, not just relationships. When I look back at my relationships and friendships, I realize that I put up with these red flags in both areas. I had been in relationships with narcissists as well as friendships all at the same time. And I really had to think about it one day and wonder why. And I was having this conversation with someone who is more of an acquaintance. It's not really a friend. I just happened to be drinking a lot that night. He showed up. We were hanging out at one of his family members' place, and we just started talking about it because it was on my mind. And as we were talking, he was like, why do you feel that you attract narcissists in your life? And I said, well, it could be because I grew up with a narcissist. This person is a family member of mine. Since I gave that family member a pass, I gave all narcissists a pass. It was that simple and that easy. And that was like the gateway. The justification that I had in my mind for giving this family member a pass for being a narcissist is that if I don't love this person, who else will? They're going to end up being alone for the rest of their lives, and they most likely might not really be accepted. And so because I love this family member, even though they annoy the crap out of me, and I can't stand narcissists, but I'm willing to put up with it for this person because this family member deserves my respect and my love, even though sometimes, I disrespect them because they deserved it. They earned it. They really did. They just triggered me in that moment, and I had to go low. So because of that, that's the reason why I find myself giving most narcissists that I meet a pass. Because if I don't like them, who else will? But there's plenty of people in the world that will put up with a narcissist and say it's out of love, right? There's a lot of people that would tolerate it because of what they've experienced growing up. I never saw substance abuse as a problem. The past few years, I started to pay attention to the people I kept around me because sometimes or someone is affecting my mental health, then I will start to withdraw from them. but I've never thought of substance abuse as being something that I couldn't handle. I was one of those people that just did not know my limits. Everyone has limits. Everyone has boundaries. My boundaries were completely open, and I didn't really think too much about it. And because of that, I found myself just being in the presence of people that are not like me at all, but I just saw them as people. I don't know. I think I remembered talking to a guy once. Yeah. I was talking to a guy once, and he was explaining to me how he could be in so many different types of groups, all different skin colors, all different personalities, all different lifestyle, all different upbringing, including culture. And then I said to him one day, you're hanging out with some pretty bad people. Not all of them, but there was one in particular. And he said, I'm not going to really judge them. I just see them as people. And hopefully what I just said will make sense later on in the podcast episode, but I just wanted to mention that now. So let's get back to the topic. Narcissists are on the top of my list. People with substance issues or substance abuse issues, we don't hang out. But if you are a narcissist, I promise you, I will cut you off. I promise you, I cannot stand them because I've tolerated it for so long. With substance abuse, I had mentioned that, we don't hang out. This is something that developed last year. I don't do drugs. I don't drink like a fish out of water. I drink in social environment. That's good for me. I'm the type of girl that will still have that same glass of wine for, an hour. Whereas some of the people that I've known from the past, by the time I finish one drink and I'm socializing and talking, which that drink could be in my hand for about 2 hours, they've already been on their sixth. And they're already like tipping over and slipping and making bad choices. But that's not me. So I surrounded myself with these types of people, and I didn't really care, and I didn't really mind being the caretaker to make sure that they got home safely and to make sure that they don't make any mistakes. Not that I'm saying I'm the type of girl, a cock block. If you're going to tell me, listen, I'm really feeling this dude, I want to go home with him and have some fun, I'd be like, girl, bye. And I will leave you. I'm not going to cock block in any way. If it's a guy that you're truly not interested in and you give me the signal like, no, then I'm going to just drag you off and take you home. But I mean, if you are giving the signal like, I'm down, I am down for everything, I am down for anything, not just everything, then I'll be like, okay, bye girl, and I'll leave you alone. That's how I did it with them. I know that there are people that can only have fun while drinking alcohol. That's why they just keep drinking. But I am not that woman. I have more fun without too much alcohol. I do not need alcohol to have fun or any substance at all to have fun. Another red flag, anger management issues, controlling behavior, lack of trust, physical, emotional, and mental abuse. You are gone. Any of that, you are gone. You will never find me. I'm not walking, I'm running. And you could be shouting, you're always running. I'm going to keep running. I won't even look back. All you're going to see is the back of me until I disappear off into the sunset. You can't manipulate me by saying, if you truly love me, you will stay here and you will fight for this relationship. Because at the end of the day, I don't see your effort. So why the hell should I be giving 100% when you give nothing at all? No, thank you. I'm running. There's nothing that you can say that will make me stop running. I am gone. So that those kind of I lumped into one because I can't deal with any of those. I just can't. Once you lose my trust, there's really no coming back from that. I would need to love you. I mean, love you more than I love myself, and that is just not possible. I have tried over the years. I have put up with some of these things that I've just mentioned: controlling behavior, anger management, lack of trust, abuse in the mental, not physical. You hit me, I will hit you back. And I might hit you harder, and I might keep going, and you will bleed. Emotional, I've dealt with that. Narcissists, they're very good at the emotional and mental abuse. They don't have to touch you, but they just know how to mess with you mentally. But those things I'm used to. But at the end of the day, I just run. You're not blood. I don't have to put up with you. I don't. The other red flags that I also mentioned: low self-esteem, codependency. I just check out. I remember I went on a date with a guy, and it was like our first date together, and we went to Wild Wings. Yeah, Wild Wings. And I loved Wild Wings at the time because they had so many different flavors, and it was fun back then. I don't know what the menu is like now, but back then it was fun because I tried all these different types of flavors that I would have never tried on a wing. So Wild Wings was awesome. And we went on the date, and I was enjoying myself, and we were talking, and then every time I was talking to him, he would jump into the conversation and go, "Oh my God, is that me? Are you talking about me?" And I was like, "Wait, what are you talking about? I'm telling you how I felt, how I'm feeling, and you're making it about you." It's just like, I mean I'm fat. And I was like, "What are you talking about? That little roll that you have on your gut that you can easily get rid of if you just stop drinking beer? You're making a big deal about this?" He's like, "Oh, so you're okay with it?" And he was just sitting there for the entire night, and every single time he opened his mouth, he was just pointing out some qualities or things that he doesn't find desirable. Like, you wouldn't catch him being in a relationship with a woman based on the list that he was pointing out about himself. So he's looking at me and he's thinking, "Oh, my teeth aren't that straight. So would that be a problem?" And we spent the whole night, like, I lost interest in my wings. I even lost my appetite. I just checked out. I just sat there and looked at him confused, because this is a moment where we should talk about interests, things that we like, things that we desire, what we're enthusiastic about. And this man is focused on nitpicking at everything that he feels is wrong with his body and asking me for validation, as if I need to tell him that everything is okay. I wouldn't have accepted the date. I didn't even notice the little belly fat that he had. I didn't even notice any crooked teeth, to be perfectly honest. Some of the things that he was pointing out, I didn't notice at all. I said yes to the date because he seemed like a nice guy. And then when we actually sat down, he just completely erased all of that by pointing out all the things that he feels that was wrong with him. I didn't even notice. By the end of the date, I was like, shit, if you don't even love yourself, why the hell will I love you? How am I supposed to muster up? I understand that you want me to continue to date you out of pity. And that's what it seemed like he wanted. He's like, "Can we have another date?" And I was like, I can't muster the pity. I cannot muster the pity. So it just the second date never happened, because I could not go through that, sitting at that table, excited to talk to this person that seemed interesting, just to turn out that he really wasn't interesting, and he has some deep-rooted issues, and he was very codependent. Like, he wanted to know everywhere that I went. He wanted to be everywhere that I was, and I was like, okay, it's just been one date. Chill. Just chill. Like, let me get to know you. Please don't smother me. You know what I mean? So in that moment, you don't know how to talk to someone with such low self-esteem. You really don't. When someone is already teared themselves down to the point where they see themselves as a cockroach, all you can do is just look at them, straight face, and you just check out. You just check out. You turn away, you're quiet for some time. You're trying to figure out something else you can focus on. Oh, the lights are so nice. Look at this wall. Because you're just uncomfortable being in that situation. I am uncomfortable. I was so uncomfortable that I did not know what to do. I was quiet the entire time. And for some apparent reason, he just didn't see it. I just checked out, completely turned off. I can understand, this need for low self-esteem and codependence in children. Like kids, I feel can go through it. It's a phase. I have a 5-year-old nephew who's turning 6, and he does sometimes feel, or the way he behaves, he gets upset when he's not doing something perfect. And I'm learning that I have to remind him, because he's 5 years old, that everything takes practice. And so I have to be patient with the child, because the child doesn't know. It doesn't have years of experience of living on this earth. But as a grown-ass man in his 30s, I'm sorry. You really do need to have some level of confidence. I don't mean arrogance, just a little bit of confidence. You can still be humble, but not self-destructive language about yourself and denigrating yourself and comparing yourself to the freaking pebble on the ground. Like, it was horrible. It was not a very good experience. I just feel that with my 5-year-old nephew, since I've already brought him up, that it's my responsibility, his mother's responsibility, his family members' responsibility to teach him how to be independent and to also believe in himself, because belief in oneself is what's going to get you far. I mean, he's already independent, but I want him to grow up believing in himself. I want him to understand that if you fail at something, try and try again until you get it right. Practice makes perfect. You know what I mean? So that's a conversation that me and his mom even had like last week, where we talked about this. So I just don't know how to translate that from a 5-year-old into someone that is a grown-up that is supposed to know this already, a grown-up that told me on the date that he had a son. So if you can't find any self-esteem or confidence in yourself, what are you actually teaching your child? And that even worried me more, because that's just not acceptable. But as an adult, it's always surprised. I'm always surprised that most adults forget these lessons they've learned. And it's sad when certain adults do come to you and they tell you their childhood stories, and you realize that in their childhood, their parents did not care enough to make them feel wanted or loved. And so growing up to be an adult in their 30s and their 40s, and they just don't have any hope or faith in themselves whatsoever. And it's depressing. But I'm not a therapist, and I can't be your teacher. This is something that you have to take the responsibility as an individual to learn for yourself. I have heard the saying, happiness can only be manifested within you. You can't expect someone else to make you happy. And I strongly agree with that. If you are going into a relationship or a date, for me it was a date, but if I was going into a relationship, I need to come in whole, is my thought process. If there are things in my life that I'm not happy with, it is my responsibility to work on it. It is not the other person's responsibility to come in and fix it for me. If you are offering to help, I appreciate it. And I might take the help if I truly trust you, because trust is huge. But at the end of the day, you have your goals and I have mine. And once we both accomplish what we need to accomplish, either together or apart, we are manifesting that happiness within ourselves. And that's what I love about partnerships, or people that find each other and they find their better half. They're not coming in perfect, but they're also not coming in expecting you to make them happy, because they know what they need to do to make themselves happy. And once you're happy on the inside, you're going to express your love and happiness even more, and it's going to better your relationship. When dealing with red flags, it can suck your energy dry and create unhappiness. The idea that you must be expecting too much out of your relationships and friendships, that you become miserable, it's not It's not true. I disagree with that statement. Your expectations are too high, and that is why you're unhappy in your relationships and your friendships. That's just not true. Most people, their expectations are basic. It's the basic interaction that you would have with an individual. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I know that someone had said that to me before. And when I repeated what they said, and I said, so what you're saying is me expecting communication from you, proper communication from you, is my expectations being too high because you don't have a mouth and you don't know how to use it. And then they kind of looked at me like, what? I'm like, what exactly are you saying? That my expectations for your communication, for proper communication from you, is too high? Is that what you're saying to me? And then they kind of stuttered around it, because sometimes when someone says something stupid, if you just repeat it back to them to get them to confirm, that throws them off. So of course, when I did that, he didn't know what to say. So then I went, oh, okay, well, let's just not have any communication at all, since you don't know how to communicate. Proper communication is too high of an expectation. So how about we just don't talk anymore? And of course, upon them hearing this, they understood what I meant, because communication, proper communication, is something that I need in a relationship. So if you cannot give me that as a friend or as a partner, then what's the point? Why are you here? Right? So these are the type of things, or gaslighting, that certain narcissists or people with red flags will try to use to kind of divert the attention away from themselves and put it back on you. Like maybe what you're asking for is just too high of an expectation. No, you just cannot fulfill something as basic. And if you can't fulfill something this basic, I feel very bad for you in life. So they say you cannot expect someone else to make you happy. It sounds manipulative. When you are being mistreated, someone is causing you unhappiness. It is all your fault. But again, it's not true. Learn how to find happiness within yourself and stop expecting them to be better. They're basically saying that you need to enable the person and their bad behavior. These are the words that people will twist to make it seem like you are the problem. And I just wanted to bring that up because this is something that I heard so many times, not just from people that I know who are talking to me specifically, but they would come and they'll tell me their relationship problems, and they'll just start saying some of these sayings, and I just kind of look at them and I'm so confused as to why they're trying to seem like they're so much smarter than they are by saying this about someone that they're supposed to care about, and saying, well, why are you putting the expectation for me to be better? Like, maybe if you loved yourself enough, you wouldn't be expecting that of me. No, if you love the person, you're going to keep them accountable. Love doesn't mean you enable people. Love doesn't mean you just let them get away with shit. That's not what love is. Love is walking along in life together and keeping each other accountable. And when one of you slips, the other one will pick you right back up and remind you, remember, you already passed this test. Keep going. You're going to backslide, but I'm right here. I'm holding your hands. That's love. If over a period of time the person is not improving, then they're not as serious about being better as they made themselves seem. And that is tragic. Now let's talk about why we take so long to realize the red flags. Other than the fact that we grew up tolerating toxic behavior that causes childhood traumas, we can also be guilty of positive projection. What is positive projection? It is the tendency to expect favorable outcomes without considering the full spectrum of possibilities. We tend to positively project with people we like. We enter into relationships and friendships with those people, not realizing that we are projecting traits that exist in us onto them. Some of these traits could be humble, direct, hardworking, gentle, creative, tenacious, intelligent, honest, warm, disciplined, and loving. Some of these traits you are attracted to. They are traits you like to nurture within yourself. So we gravitate to people who have these qualities. You will overlook red flags just to stay in their orbit. When you feel good within yourself, you will feel loving towards those around you. You are projecting your love. That is a positive projection. It is really hard to see through that when your love is projected back to you. It is your feelings, not necessarily theirs. So you can become blind to their red flags because they're just mimicking what you're doing. I wanted to add that to the podcast episode because this is something that I had experienced years ago, where I was talking to a guy and we were dating. And it came to a point, like over time, that I noticed that he just kind of mimicked what I was doing right back to me, because that's how loving I was. But I could not distinguish the action that he was portraying to me as sincere because I couldn't see it. And then one day we were just having a conversation, and I realized in this deep conversation that we were having, he kept agreeing with everything that I said. He didn't really have any input. And when he did have input, he was just kind of repeating what I was saying to him right back to me. And I started probing him a little bit more at that point, because now I'm seeing this behavior where he's just mimicking everything to keep me happy. So then I start asking just tough and difficult questions like, where did you get this thought process from? When have you experienced this in your life? And he couldn't answer the question. He was just repeating everything back to me that I said to him. And I thought, whoa. So basically, I liked this guy because he was me. Everything he was giving back to me was everything I was giving to him. And once I realized that, I saw him completely differently. I was like, oh, wow. So I really don't know who the hell you are. The person that you've been showing me this entire time, you're just projecting me right back to me. It was crazy. But I did not at the time know that that was a positive projection. I was projecting this idea of who he was onto him. And so he projected that exact same back to me, so that I would believe the persona. But who he was, don't ask me, because I don't know. I'd have to say I don't know. Like, he said this, but I said it like maybe a few seconds before he repeated it back to me. So I don't know. So yeah, you can be blinded for some time until you start to realize that the way he talks to his friends or the way he talks to his family, and certain times when he's talking to people and he's giving them advice, it's completely contradictory to what you had discussed with him some time before, but he doesn't remember. And the language is not matching up. The thought process is not matching up. And that's when you realize the lie. It takes time. You see it over time. So positive projection is a good thing in many relationships and friendships. When you know others' values and passion, it's easy to be positive with them, which is what he was doing. He portrayed a positivity that he did not have. He was just mimicking it with me. Positive projection is considered to be a people person skill. You become fascinated with others. You take active and enthusiastic interest. You want to know about their desires, fears, and dreams. By doing this, you become fascinating and interesting. It is not a bad thing But the other aspect of projecting can be negative projecting. We can unload undesirable qualities onto a person, institution, or ideas, which will free you of discomfort in accepting these undesirable qualities as your own. That can be seen as red flags. The list of red flags I gave in the beginning, lack of trust, low self-esteem, narcissism, and more, can be projected by a toxic person as a way to label others as red flags, walking red flags, which is why it is hard sometimes to identify who is really the problem in the relationships or the friendships. It's those lies that they like to tell. I think an ex-friend was sharing lies about me, which I was kind of confused because usually lies are things that you make up. But she was basically telling what happened to her or things that she has done and then putting my name on it and telling her friends that, oh, isn't that disgusting? Like, I cannot believe Orchid did that. The problem is none of her friends believed her because they've all met me, even though they haven't spent very much time with me. They've met me and they noticed that that's not my character or my personality. But she would spread that to her mom and her sisters, and her mom and her would go around into the entire community to people that I don't even know. I think I've met them maybe once. I just said, hi, how are you? And told them all of this. And none of them believed them. They would come up to me and they say, hey, like, I've been hearing this. And I said, oh, did you believe it? And they would say, no, actually, because that's really not your personality. Like, I've seen you a few times. I've seen you interact with people. And what they're describing doesn't sound like you at all. So I have a feeling that they're just projecting what they're doing in their lives onto you to try to make you look like the bad person because that's how they feel based on how they're behaving. And I'm sitting there looking at this man like, he's a grown-ass man too. I think his name was Leon. Yes, his name was Leon. I thought it was a really unique name to be called Leon. I haven't really heard that very much. And he was explaining, his thought process when he was hearing all of this. And it impressed me. I would have definitely dated him for the fact that he had that level of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is sexy. Oh my gosh, emotional intelligence is sexy. Just to have a man break stuff down, I'm like, my toes curling. My toes are curling. But I was like, nope. Don't fault, withdraw, pull back, and just say, thank you so much. It's nice to know that there are people out there that has discernment. And he was like, thank you for checking that. And we just complimented each other, because I just had to show him some love. Emotional intelligence is just so sexy. But so with that situation, I didn't confront her about it. I just let her continue. And when the friendship was over, again, because I prayed about it and I asked God, I'm like, can you just remove this girl? Like, I just don't have time. And God showed up. God was like, okay, bitch, kicked her right out my front door. It was beautifully done. I turned around and I was like, God is good. And then I ran across the other room and I was like, all the time, like a crazy person. I was like, God showed up and God just did it. Just kicked it to the curb, quick tings. And I think she came back like a few months later begging me to be her friend again. And I'm like, you remember all those stories you were talking about me behind my back, you and your mom, to all these people? Yeah, they told me all about it. And she just looked at me with her jaw dropped because she really thought I didn't know. This entire time, I just allowed her to keep doing what she needed to do so that I can build up my evidence. And when she makes a fool of herself and, God kicks her out the door, if she decides to come back backtracking, talking about how we're good friends and we've just been so good to each other, I'm going to have all of my evidence ready to be like, you remember this? Do you remember this? Do you remember this? Are you trying to say that you're a good friend for doing all of this? And they're stunned. And after that, you're like, don't contact me again. If you see me on the street, I don't know you. I don't know you. Don't even look at me. Don't even look at me. Act like I'm a pole walking down the street. It's weird. You might feel crazy, but I'm the pole walking down the street. So yeah, that's my example for what I just explained about people, toxic people projecting their own insecurities, their own lacks onto you. And sometimes people, they do it with a lie. And it might actually be something that actually happened in their lives, but they switched it and told the story as it was you. And then you know, if you're not mentally strong, you will start to question if you are the problem in certain situations. That was just my example, but you could have your own example that may not be exactly similar, but where the person is projecting their own negativity about themselves onto you and saying that you have this problem. That will make you question yourself. It will make you think that you are the problem. If you are a kind and loving and caring person, they will take advantage of that. One of you is using feelings against the other. All of that takes time to identify. So you may end up staying longer than needed in that relationship or friendship to get the evidence to walk away. And if your positive projections are blinding you, it's going to be even longer. I admire people whose rose-colored glasses stay on for a certain period of time. It means that rose-colored glasses would only stay on if the enthusiasm is reciprocated. Once there is a change, a slight change, the glasses starts to slip. Thank God I am that person. But God is good. God is good. I need to run across the room though and scream all the time, but I can't do that. I'm recording a podcast episode. I don't know if you'll even hear me if I run across the room. I am guilty of positive projection in relationships and friendships. I told a friend years ago that I tolerated a lot more in friendships than I do in intimate relationships. She thought that was odd. She asked why. I said that it was easier because I didn't see my friends every day. Every time I see a friend, it's over a period of time, and we always have a lot to share. Interesting stories, real life stories to share. The updates are fun. When you spend more time with someone you're in an intimate relationship with, you know what they do every day. You learn through text messages, phone calls, and spending time with them. They become predictable to you. Sometimes nothing is new. You are just enjoying each other's presence some days because you have nothing to talk about, but you just like seeing each other or smiling at each other or just, you know, cracking a joke in a moment and just laying on the couch together watching a movie. That's presence. That's just enjoying that person's presence. In friendships, I do not put much thought into it, and I give a lot of chances, but that was in the past. I was not as tolerant in relationships because I saw the red flags, and it doesn't take me long to make a decision about them. I think my first boyfriend, I just knew from the way beginning, less than a month in, that he and I would not last for a very long time. I just knew it. And when it was over, you know, I still had feelings for him, but there was no real love because I had already made up my mind from the beginning that he was not it. So this is what I mean by making a decision. It doesn't take me very long. Within the first 2 weeks, less than a month, I will know if I want to continue with you or if we would survive. Before we transition into the conclusion of this podcast episode, I wanted to go back and touch on something I mentioned earlier in the podcast episode, which was the story of this guy who had all these friends. And, you know, some are bad and some are good, but they were all from different walks of life. And for him, even with the ones that he shouldn't be hanging out with, he just saw them as humans. He saw them and loved them for who they are. He accepted them for who they are. And the reason why I stopped explaining that in the beginning is because we weren't close to talking about positive projection. But that story that I had to cut off is an example of positive projection. This person just connected with anyone, anywhere, from any walks of life. You could be someone who's struggling with substance abuse. You could be a narcissist. You could be someone with low self-esteem, codependency, and he would just connect with you. All he would see is how good of a person you are. He does not realize that he's positively projecting himself onto someone else, and he's seeing himself in everyone he meets. That is positive projection. The term at the time was he saw the good in people because he internally felt good about himself. He thought he was amazing. Not that I'm saying he's not amazing. He's a great person. I thought he was a great person, but he just exuded this love and kindness because that's how he was feeling on the inside. And every single person he meets was just as kind and loving as he was. And he projected that with such enthusiasm that it became infectious to the people that he would encounter. So even if they weren't great people, they may be even toxic, you wouldn't know, because when they're around him, they just kind of turn into this completely different person. Positive projection is not all that bad. It sometimes gives you the ability to change atmospheres, to take people out of the rut they may be stuck in, that negativity. Just being in their presence or being in your presence as a positive projector could sometimes just bring them out of whatever they are, and they could be someone that they wish they were in that moment. It's not a bad thing. You just have to recognize that is your power and to not fall for it when it happens. Be able to see the signs when it happens, and remember to have boundaries so you don't fall for your own projection. I'm trying to think of an example of this, but what's it called? Medusa. I think in some cartoons back in the day, a way for the hero in that story to defeat Medusa was to make sure Medusa saw herself in a mirror. And so her power was to, if she looks at you and you make eye contact with her, you would turn to stone. And so this power of positive projection, some people are mirrors. So they will bounce it right back onto you and you will turn to stone. That's the only example for how powerful positive projection can be that I could share with you in this podcast episode. Just don't be a Medusa. The question I posed at the beginning of this episode was, are the red flags we witness in relationships the same as the red flags in friendships? I would say yes, they are the same. I wish I could explain why we give passes to people that exhibits red flags in relationships compared to friendships, but I can only speak for myself and why I give passes, which I've already shared. The second question is, do we have different standards for intimate relationships than we do friendships? And I would say no. I feel our standards are the same. We all want to be treated well. We all want to be treated with respect. We all want to be loved and appreciated. Everyone wants to belong, feel like they belong to someone, to a group, or an organization. Regardless if we are being mistreated, we will always remember those standards, even if it takes a long time. That concludes this podcast episode, but I wanted to take this time to let you know that the Ambitious blog will be launching soon. I've already started to do the promotions on the social media page, Instagram business page, so you should definitely check that out. I will be joining a blogger to write posts for the website. My website, if you've been listening to this podcast since the conception, it's taonetwork.ca. I have a specific page that says blog, so just click on that and you should see my first blog post on there. So I do encourage you to go and check it out. Definitely go and read my first blog post and, come on the social media page and let me know what you think about it. I'm waiting for Caddy, who is the second blogger on the website, to write her wonderful travel posts because she has been traveling like crazy. And I have her on social media, so I haven't really creeped her social media as much because I kind of want to hear the stories behind some of the pictures and the adventures that she went on when she went traveling to different countries. So if you are interested in what I'm writing or Caddy is writing, especially about traveling, you want to escape for a minute by going on the website on your phone and clicking on the Obsession blog and reading some of these posts, please do. I welcome it. So thank you for supporting the Orchid Blooms podcast. Please subscribe, follow, rate, and leave a review on the podcast or your favorite episode. We also have social media pages. Subscribe and follow for Orchid Blooms YouTube channel, the Ambitious Obsession Network on Facebook, at the Ambitious Ops on Twitter, at the Ambitious Net on Instagram, and of course the new Obsession blog, which is launching soon, is also on our website, taonetwork.ca. Don't forget to share your favorite podcast episode with your family and your friends, and I really do hope you have a splendid day.